Welcome to the Souls and Stardust podcast. I'm Meo.
And I'm Shannon.
We're two soul sisters navigating through our human experience on a journey towards healing. Join us for a candid and fun discussion on all things spiritual, soulful, intuitive, and magical. Today's episode is Meet the Hosts, and we are going to be interviewing Shannon today. Shannon is...
Hey.
Welcome. Shannon's all the way in Wisconsin. I've actually never met her in person, but yet I've known this woman, I think, my whole life, plus a few other lifetimes as well. I'm pretty sure of that. So welcome, Shannon, to our first official get to know you, so we can learn about who you are, where you come from, how you navigate through these abilities, and I want to hear it all. So tell us about yourself, Shannon.
Well, gosh, so where should we start is always the best part, right? I usually tell people, and by the way, I think it's amazing that Meo and I have stumbled upon each other in this life, and that's a really magical story that we should tell maybe at the end of this episode, or we save that for another one. But I always tell people who ask me what it's like to have intuitive abilities, and when did I know I was psychic or intuitive, or how did I know I was meant to be a healer, all of these questions. And I usually just tell people I've been intuitive since I was a small child. I always knew things, just had a sense of knowing, and didn't really know where the information came from, but I just knew things. And I think over time, that was not nurtured for me so much as a small child. And I grew up in a family that I think that there are a lot of intuitive people in my family. They just never really work with it. And so I don't think
that's what it
was
right?
Nurtured in me. Yeah. Yep. So I kind of turned everything off when I was a small girl, probably around the age of 10 or 12. I just kind of turned everything down or off completely. And when I was going through graduate school for my PhD, I had a few things that happened to me that were pretty stressful. Going through a doctorate program is stressful anyway, but there were a couple of deaths in our family that they were big events for us to move through, big emotional events. And those abilities that I had, they started turning on for me. I started
without
seeing,
needing to do anything. They were just happening.
No. Yeah. And it actually, I started having these dreams that were really like visitation dreams from departed loved ones. And then also these prophetic type of dreaming, and a lot of symbolism. And then I started seeing apparitions. So that doesn't happen for me often. Yeah. I mean, I got scared. I thought I was actually losing my mind a little. And then I decided I needed to ask for help from a mentor. And so I started working with this man who, he was at the university that I was at, and he's Native American, and his grandmother taught him a lot about intuition through their culture. And he just helped explain a number of things to me that helped me feel better about what was happening. And then over the course of the next 10 years, I just sought out mentors that would help me nurture what was turning on for me. At one point, I would have the same dream over and over again. And I dream of people like bending over me while I was sleeping in bed, and they were wearing cloaks. Oh, dude, yeah.
Oh my gosh.
They were wearing dark cloaks. So like the hooded figures, you couldn't see the face, but I would always open my eyes in the dream or real life, right? Like it was never really certain if I was awake or asleep. And 3:00 in the morning, every morning, I would wake up and I would see these figures bent over me, and I would get scared. And finally, the mentor that I sought out and was working with, she's like, honey, these are your spirit guides.
Oh,
They're trying to get your attention.
yeah, 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 yeah.
So in one, yep, in one, you know, one of my guides in particular, he had a sense of humor, and I just wasn't listening the way that I needed to be for them to actually work with me.
Okay.
So that's how he got my attention. And so I started working with him
Cute.
regularly. But so my abilities of clairvoyance turned on after the deaths in the family, and then working with my clairvoyance actively, and then this clairsentience and claircognizance. So sight, feeling, and sensing, those all turned on for me
Like at the same
over
time,
the last 50. Yeah, well, they came
or
online at different times, but it was like when one turned on and I started working out with it, like more
yeah,
things started turning on. And
yeah,
then as I worked with them, it just became more and more clear. Like it was easier to work with them because I was actually spending time working out those muscles, right?
right, right.
So
Getting used to
um,
them, what they sound like,
yes,
and how they communicate, and what they feel
yeah,
like.
yep. And this whole time though, I'm doing it like on the down low, right? Because I'm in academia as a university professor at this point in my life, and fully feeling like if anybody were to know this about me, they would definitely call me
Yeah,
crazy or make some kind of like big judgment about me or discredit me. And so I really lived a double life for a long time,
I get it.
working with my abilities. Yeah. And it was funny too, because people couldn't figure out why I was such a good teacher. And it was because I could walk into a room and I could feel the energy of the room, and I could feel the energy of each of the students in there. And I would figure out what I needed to do in order to teach the way that would benefit them the best. And, um, and then they would also, like, students would also seek me out for advice, right?
Mhm.
Even though I wasn't their advisor. And I would I
Yeah.
would be like having these clairvoyant visions of what they like, the work that they would be doing, and what was coming up for them. And so, like, very nonchalantly I'd say, have you ever thought about this or that? Or
Oh
and
my
these
God, I
students would
was
be like,
just
oh my God, I
there.
love
Yeah,
doing that.
yeah. I love that.
So I led a, yeah, that's, I mean, in a nutshell, that's how things have progressed, and eventually ended up leaving academia because the call to doing healing work full time just became so strong that um, I couldn't help but follow it.
That's
So
perfect. That's
yeah.
beautiful. That's beautiful. So when that happened, like, was it just like all of a sudden everything, the lights had turned on for you and you can see everything, or was it just like a slow trickle, or how did your awareness of
when
everything
the
start
ability
to expand? Yeah.
when the abilities turned on, you mean?
Hmm.
Um, it was actually slow and frustrating.
Okay.
So things turned
That's what
on.
I think people need to hear, that it's it could be different
Yep.
for every person.
And things turned on. And then I was like, well, why? Why does it work this way? I have to know everything about this. And I need to have the explanation. And I was trying to put so much logic into it because I'm trained as a scientist,
Yeah.
right? But
Yeah.
I'm very intuitive. So that's like operating out of both hemispheres and
Yep.
trying to get them to marry each other.
It's a perfect.
So it was a slow process for me because I got in my own way so often and I wanted to know all the answers. And that's just not how intuition works.
Right.
You have to allow yourself to be led through it, and things open up at the pace that's right for you most of the time. Some people will they'll be tossed into the pool effectively and then have to figure out how to swim. And it did
Sink or
not
swim.
happen for me. Yeah, it did not happen for me that way because I got in my own way. So it was slow. And then the more I worked on it and the more I realized, like, okay, I can just relax about this and I can just let it be what it's going to be. Then everything sped up because I wasn't getting in my own
You
way
weren't
about it
resisting.
anymore.
Yeah.
And I will, Yep. And then when I stopped resisting my divine life's work as a healer, um, and I actually stepped onto that path fully and not being afraid to tell people that's what I was doing. Basically not giving a shit, right?
Right.
Like, you
Right.
can judge me all you want, but this
Mm-hmm.
is what I know I'm meant to do. Then everything expanded out 1,000-fold or more, right? It was like
Mm-hmm.
boom, boom, boom. All of this stuff came online, and now for me, it's a matter of keeping up with it. And as soon as I get the handle on one ability, then it changes and upgrades to something
That's cool.
new. So there are days when I go into you go into your healing room and you're like, okay, we're going to do this, and then all of a sudden you're shown that it works differently, or you've been upgraded. I'm like, oh, okay, we're doing this now. Okay, so you have to teach me. I'm ready to
Mm-hmm.
learn. And so it definitely, once I got out of my own way, was like everything sped up way faster.
Yeah. So what is that like now for you? So we know now you've transitioned out of, being a teacher, being a professor into healing work, which is almost completely, it's not the opposite, because if you think of like, you know, how science has a goal and a
Yep.
mission as well, so do you, but it's just
Hmm.
approached in a different way. How do you actively
Hmm.
practice that?
And
How do you use your gifts? And
okay. So, well, teachers are healers too in a lot of ways, but so what it's like for me now is, well, one, it's a huge relief, right? I go to work every day, and I feel good when I'm there, and I'm helping people shift their lives in a meaningful way for them. And that is so fulfilling and humbling. And I'm hardly ever tired from the work that I do,
mm-hmm,
versus
mm-hmm.
when I was resisting my
Yeah,
call, I was exhausted all the time.
drained.
So
Yep.
yeah. And in terms of using my abilities, it's I just I just let whatever needs to come through me come through, and it's a very natural process. And in a healing room, it just flows. When you're in a classroom, it can flow too, but I had to really be careful about how I presented myself, or I felt like I had to.
Of course.
So now it's like this opportunity to be totally authentic in who I am and what I bring to the world,
Right.
and to feel proud of that and not hide it, and then to actually feel a lot of gratitude that I get to step into this work and do this work. It's very, very fulfilling.
And
Does that answer your
yeah,
question?
and then so take us through, like, so now you have a healing practice you do, or it didn't start as Reiki. It started as readings, or how did you start into
Oh,
like that aspect of working with clients and stuff like that?
yeah. So this is a great question. We kind of skipped over that. But while I was working with my intuition, I was really working first and foremost with like oracle cards, and really trying to read people and practice just reading energy and getting intuitive feels on who people were and what they were going through. So like, you know, out of like the back corner of my house, I would invite people over, and I would like practice read for them. And if they, friends and family, they had questions about life or decisions, and I'd say, okay, let's see, what spirit has to say. And I would use a deck of cards, and we would work through it. So eventually, like as I became more comfortable with that, I started offering readings for people I didn't know,
Yeah.
and that actually, it became way more than I thought it would. And I had people like booking readings left and right. And so then I thought, oh, I'm gonna have to say this is what I do pretty soon, because the word's getting out. And at that point, I was trying to make a decision about stepping more fully into that kind of work, but I didn't know if just doing clairvoyant or psychic readings for people was it. I felt like there was
Like a
something
gateway.
more there.
It
Yeah.
was it
And
was the gateway drug to
it was my gateway drug to the spiritual life,
yeah.
right? And so maybe I'll go ahead and tell like how I made this transition out of academia. I struggled with exhaustion for a couple of years teaching 4 courses a semester, and hundreds of students each semester. And so eventually my body started to get very sick, adrenal fatigue, thyroid issues, and I partly was resisting my call to my life's work. So I actually took a reduction in my teaching appointment to try to get a handle on my health.
Okay.
And at the end of that time, I asked my boss if I could do a permanent reduction in teaching to a half-time position. And she said, I'll ask the dean. She asked the dean, and the dean said, nope, you either come back full-time or we will replace you. And in the meantime, while the dean was being asked, I had written a letter to the universe basically saying, here's my deal. I know I'm being called to something different. I don't know what it is, and I'm really scared. I don't know how to leave a job that's perfectly good by everyone's standards to walk into something that I don't even know what looks like yet. But I need your help, and I
Mm,
need these things taken care of. I need to support my family. I need to feel fulfilled in my work. I had all of these parameters. Um, and then 2 days after I wrote that letter to the universe is when the dean said, come back full time or not at all.
right. Oh,
And so I
perfect.
like
No
I got
problem.
an
I was,
answer.
thank you. This made it
And so I
very
sat with,
easy.
yeah, well, but I actually sat with it for a few days, and I tried to envision what I asked spirit to show me what would happen if I stayed for a couple of more years at full time. And I kept getting the same visual of a beautiful vine with blossoms that just withered and died. And
Mm,
so
that's
I
pretty
said,
clear.
okay, I've got to go. And I wrote my resignation letter, turned it in, and the day after I turned in my resignation letter, I got an offer to learn energy healing.
Oh my God.
And the shocker here is I had been asking for a teacher for 6 years, and I had been like telephoning people, sending emails, are you teaching energy healing? I really want to learn, and everybody turned me down for 6 years. And then the day after I resigned from my full-time job, the offer to learn energy healing came out of
That
nowhere.
is nuts.
It's totally nuts. And so of
But
course I said
but I
yes.
mean, but
And then
that's how it all works though. It's always, that's why I say it's like nothing's ever by accident. Nothing is ever by coincidence. The timing for
mm-mm.
everything, when you ask for it and you expect it in return, something's going to happen. It's almost like waiting for you to, like, okay, we're waiting for you to ask so we can give this to you.
Absolutely. And if it's meant for you, it won't go past you. And
Yeah.
I immediately said yes. And I went to a psychic and wellness fair a few weeks after that. And this woman reading me, she said, what do you do with healing? And I said, well, I don't do anything with healing. I give psychic readings occasionally. And she's like, no, no, you have blue flames coming out of your hands. You're a healer. And
Hmm.
I said, well, I guess I'm going to be going through my first levels of Reiki training in a couple of weeks. And she said, that's just the beginning. You will have no idea what is in store for you. That is just the beginning. So within 3 weeks of going through my Reiki training, I had 2 job offers as a practitioner. And there were never, my husband was, he was supportive, but he was like, just don't get us into a situation where we can't pay our bills. And we had no months ever where we were like not going to have enough money. I was like, the universe fully supported me in that transition to doing this work. And so here I am now, and I am so grateful. And I'm at the point now where I'm teaching other people, and my schedule is so full that I feel delighted that I can send these people looking for healing off to other people that I have trained so
Yeah.
that they can get healing. And I just, it blossomed into something that I never imagined it would. And
It's
it
far beyond,
still is
it's
shifting.
beyond
And
you, and it's beyond all of, like, it's part of the bigger plan and the bigger picture for everything. It's like we're just a little drop.
mhm,
We're
it's
just a drop.
magical.
Yeah, we're fucking drop in the bucket. So
it's fucking magical is what I say all the time.
magic. That's very true. So what else? What else? What else?
I know.
Your do you daily do are you like a daily meditator? Do you get Reiki on yourself?
Mm.
How do you self-care in this, you know? I know like
In
I'll
what
do
I
because
do.
yeah, because we'll do like not true readings where it's like we sit down for half an hour, but like we'll do test reads on each
Hmm.
other just to tune in and get baseline, like, hey, what's your gut, what's your first reaction on this situation or this person or this. But aside from us just
Hmm.
casually tuning in, what do you book people for
Hmm.
services? How does that work?
Oh, yeah. Okay. So for my own self-care, I try to get a practitioner to work on me and do Reiki every couple of weeks.
Weeks.
But when I am giving Reiki, it's the beautiful thing about Reiki energy is when you work as a channel and pull Reiki through, you get the healing vibrations
Very
too.
cool.
So um every time I give Reiki, I get it as well. I use psychics and intuitives too. Some people like they go to church and pray. I sit on a meditation cushion. I don't do it daily right now, but I have a pretty regular practice, so several times a week at the very least. And then when I really am struggling through big transitions, I will use people who are intuitive, psychic mediums, energy workers to help me work through a lot of that.
And
So
are you blown
yeah, I mean, I
away by
oh, go ahead.
how, I was just say, are you blown away when they come through with like similar messages, or have you gotten specifics through multiple people? So confirmation wise, or
Oh my gosh, yes. So I'm because remember I'm trained as a scientist too. So like when I hear information from one intuitive, I usually go and I ask several others. I mean, the benefit of being intuitive is you usually have intuitive friends too.
yeah, yeah, yeah,
So I take a poll.
yeah,
I usually take a poll, and
which
I
I
can tell
love.
when information
I
it's a
love it.
benefit totally.
Yeah.
Hmm.
Well, and it's
Um,
confidence
I
building
can
for
usually.
me.
Oh.
Like, sorry to cut you off, but just saying, like, when you ask, hey, what do you see on this? And then when you say, oh my God, that's what my other three friends said, then I'm like, yay, like confidence boost.
Well, it's validating and it helps you learn at the same time, and it helps other people learn and feel good about the information that they're pulling through. So, yeah, I usually do get like several perspectives, and I pay attention to the information that is common across them. And I also pay attention to my own body too, right? So,
Yeah.
um, lately I've been really focusing on going inward and really feeling within my own body what's true for me based on the questions that I have and the energy of the current situation. And then I will go and I'll ask somebody, hey, this is what I'm picking up for myself, can you tell me what you're getting?
Hmm.
Because a lot of times like we can give our power away to people who are intuitive or psychic, and just like right
Yeah.
off the bat, like whatever they say we're going to think is true, or that's what's going to
Yeah.
happen, and that's really that's disempowering for us,
Yeah.
right? Like we're meant to go inward and know that stuff for ourselves, and it's okay to like get feedback from other people, but I like to stress to people, like, don't give your power away, like don't let anyone else be your oracle, you're your own oracle first. So
That's, no,
um,
that's
yeah.
perfect. Trusting that
And
self-confidence.
we can, yeah. And that's probably actually a really good topic that we can get into at a later date, where we really talk about what does it mean to read the energy of this a
Yeah.
situation, and then there's infinite possibilities for how it can work out, and then how you give your power away to that or not. So that's a really important topic.
Perfect. And
But
then,
well, should we yeah, oh, go ahead.
yeah, I know that's what I was going to ask was about examples with clients, but now I'm like, oh, wait, I kind of want to save some of this for our future podcast because we have some really,
Hmm.
really fun topics we're going to hit. And some of these stories are going to cross episodes probably, or we'll probably bring them up a couple times because they're such solid examples. But thank you so much for
Hmm.
sharing your perspective on that. Um, And your friends and family now, are they completely supportive, or is that still kind of like sensitive area? Do they get what you do? Have you had to prove to them?
Um, oh gosh. I would say that my extended family does not really understand, but like my parents know, and my brother and my close family, they know what I do now, and they know how life works for me. I
Okay.
hid it from them for a long time because I grew up in a very religious family, and it was kind of like iffy of like as I navigated how to let them know how life worked for me in terms of getting this information and then actually doing the healing work. And
Yeah.
but now it's
They don't
now
think you're
it's
just some
it's
crazy.
yeah, they don't think I'm doing the devil's work or
Yeah, yeah,
anything
yeah.
like that, right? They like it was a little strange at first, but it's like they've 180 like come around and said, okay, she's helping people, and
Yeah.
she's being authentic in that. We don't talk about it a lot because I think
I
that
think it still makes
it
people
makes them a little
uncomfortable.
uncomfortable.
Yeah.
Hmm.
Which is fine.
Yeah, and maybe they just don't know how to relate to that type of experience because
Absolutely.
it doesn't work
It
for them that
Yeah,
way yet,
and that's
right?
that's human experience right there. Is you can't
Hmm.
fully, like, what's that saying where it's like you can't meet people unless they've already done the work, or you can't meet them unless they've already met themselves there. And I think when it comes to the
Yes,
spiritual work that we do, and I don't know, I'm not like, I'm not in your
I
position
agree.
yet where I'm, professional and in business for this or whatever,
Oh,
but the work that we do and the healing that we do, even on a one-on-one basis, of someone coming for advice or needing insight or connecting
mhm,
with somebody for, healing and grief therapy and stuff like that, like, I mean, that's work.
mhm.
um so it's nice that those are the people that find the most value in what we're able to
Mhm.
do, without having, because it kind of gives me
Oh,
that,
and
I don't
and
I don't
they
give a shit. I don't give a shit if this person approves of me or not, because they don't even know what I've done for this person
mhm,
and helped, them through
exactly.
whatever they're dealing with.
Yep.
Yeah. So very cool. Thanks,
And
Shannon.
that's really
Oh, sorry.
yeah, that's a process too. Nope, it's good. That's a process too in and of itself, getting comfortable with like not caring about
Yeah,
how certain people will judge you. And it's just because, like you said, they can only meet you as far as they've gone within themselves. So and that's
absolutely.
not to disparage anybody. It's just everybody comes to their place at their time. And I try, I try just not to get bogged down in that. And I focus on the people who I'm able to help and who have genuine gratitude for that. So yeah, it's really fulfilling work. I can't emphasize that enough. So
Perfect.
now it's your turn. So we get to learn all about Mio.
And I apparently
And
did not
this is
have
so
enough
exciting because
caffeine today. I'm so sorry. I was like not yawning
because
because I was bored. I'm like, oh no, I'm physically getting tired. I'm an awful
well,
friend.
here I am marveling too at your interviewing skills. I'm like, oh God, I hope I can interview her
Oh
as
my,
well as she's interviewing me.
that's so funny.
So,
All right.
but I'm sure we'll be led where we need to be led. So
Absolutely.
why don't you tell us a bit about like how things started for you when you first realized you were intuitive?
So, like you, it's something that I've had my entire life. I have been, the earliest memory I have though is about 7 years old, right after my grandpa died, or right around that time. I recall like having an experience where I picked up on someone's thoughts, and it was something very simple. Because, like I said, I was literally like 7. This guy was like one of my sister's friends. She doesn't even remember this story, but like sister's friend over, cassette tape in. He wants to show her a song, so he starts fast forwarding. And in my head, I start counting 1,000, 2,000, 1,000, and he finishes counting for
Oh
1,000
wow.
out loud. And I was like, oh God, he heard. Like, did he hear me? Did he? And that moment
Oh
stuck.
my
It
God.
stuck with me because it made sense later on when I could look back on moments in my life. But it stuck with me enough where
Mm-hmm.
from that point forward, my grandfather died and he was buried in a plot number 44. So through the entire rest of my life, I have had the number 44 come up for me where it's like, that was my dad's badge number, and boyfriends that I dated, it was their jersey number, and friends, even girlfriends now, were like, oh my God, that was my basketball number when I was in school. And it's like one of those things where I'm like, okay, something's up. So I kind of just
Synchronicity.
track that along my life. The crazy part though was, like you, I would have dreams and visitations. And when you mentioned that you had a dream about like the black cloaked figure, one of the craziest premonitions that I had was, so normally when I dream, it's my house, but it's not my house. It's very much like, okay, this is home. But this particular case, I was actually in my house. I woke up and I was walking down the stairs. I look out the window and I see someone in a black cloak, which I thought was the Grim Reaper, because that's all of my mind knew how to label at the moment. So I'm
Process,
looking, yeah. So I look out, I see the black cloak. He's pointing into my house, and I'm like, okay. And I can hear sounds coming from under the stairway in our living room. So I open up the stairs, and inside is it's a family friend, but we call him my uncle. He's getting dragged into the darkness, and he's grabbing his throat and he's reaching out. And then he died a week later of a like, not the lung cancer,
esophageal cancer.
Yeah, a throat cancer and stuff like that. I didn't know he had cancer. I didn't know he was sick. We hadn't talked and spoken in a very long time, but that was the dream that I had right before he died.
Oh my gosh.
And
wow.
then I would have where like my uncle died. Even my boyfriend at the time when I dating, he would have visitations from my uncle. And then when my grandmother died though, I can recall, long story short, she was overseas for a wedding, broke her hip, and the middle of the night, she was supposed to be coming back to the States to, she was alive still. So she was supposed to be flown back home to get better. But what happened was she had to get off the plane because long story, she ended up in England in some hospital. So middle of the night, I shoot up, check my phone, check the time. It's probably close to like 3:30 or 3 o'clock in the morning, something. As I'm checking the time, it starts ringing. And I fucking knew it. The minute it started ringing, it was my stepdad calling to tell me that my grandmother had just died. And it was like, oh my God.
I have to tell you, it's 2:44 on my clock here.
Oh, I just saw on mine that it was 12:44 here. Of course.
So wow, you basically are having these like missions of before people are transitioning, you're like tuning into that energy of right before their transition.
And it keeps going. I've lost a lot of people, Shannon. I've lost a lot of people. And even in 1 year, I think I lost 3 or 4 people. And the craziest part is, so as this is all progressing, like and I want to be sensitive, but even my ex-brother-in-law had popped into my head one night as I'm walking downstairs to go turn off all the lights, get everyone to bed. This vision of him pops into my head, and I can see him in my mind's eye standing at the table. And it was crazy because the story that popped into my mind was after the uncle that died from the throat cancer, after he died, the ex-brother-in-law saw a vision in his house of like a static figure after my uncle died. So
so he saw it too. Okay.
So he had his own experience with when my uncle died. So then fast forward years later, I'm walking down the stairs. That story pops in my head of the static figure. So in my head, I'm seeing my ex-brother-in-law. I'm like, oh, that's weird. Why would I think of that story? The next morning, I get a text message from my sister that he had killed himself. And that same day, my mom, so the same day I have the vision, my mom's driving and out of nowhere says, I forgive you, because he pops into her head and she feels the need to say out loud that she forgives him. And then the next day he dies. And so,
my God,
stuff like this just keeps happening.
I have goosebumps.
Yeah, he's around me a lot. Every reading I get done, he's the first one to pop in. Very, very strong energy. Very much like, it's super crazy, the stuff that has come through. So Okay. Sorry, my son's downstairs.
Kids. It's okay.
um, yeah, so
Wow. So
it's,
go
that
ahead. I don't want to interrupt
happens.
you.
No, no, no. So that happens, and then not even a couple months later, another thing happens where I'm thinking of a friend, reminded of something. I think of him. I get physical chest
Hmm.
pains. I got like my heart started hurting, and then the next day I find out on Facebook he died of a heart attack.
Oh
So
my gosh. Okay. So you actually feel into the symptoms or like
yeah,
the way people are passing too.
yes,
Wow, that's intense, right? To be able to tune into that and have that sentience about
it is.
what people are experiencing.
Because if I were to go to a
Oh my
doctor, they
gosh.
would
Oh,
have put me on like blood pressure medicine, or they would have had me doing
right.
heart monitor stuff. And I'm like, that's it, it's not me. It's not mine, you
Hmm.
know? And
And
then
as soon as as soon oh, go ahead.
no, no, no. I was saying like, so all of this is happening. And this is kind of when I started to, when this is where our story comes into place, where you and I meet online. Because
Hmm.
what happened was, as I'm experiencing all these things and recollecting moments in my life of like ghost stories, seeing apparitions, seeing stuff happen in front of me, seeing doors open. I've had like I was a teenager once, and I remember sitting at dinner with three friends, and there's a guy, one of the girl's boyfriends, he's got his back to the window behind him. And so the three of us, the girls, were
Hmm.
looking at the window and we're looking at him. He can't see what's going on behind him. We watch almost like somebody taking their hand and going like this across the vertical blinds behind him. He can't see it, but he jumps up and he goes, something just touched me on the back of my neck. And that whole weekend, hi, that whole weekend was all about stuff happening.
Oh,
All right, so then as all these things are happening, um, I I basically start telling other friends these stories and finding out that the things I've been through, not everybody has gone through them. It's like, yeah, isn't this normal? And they're like, no, that's never happened to me before. And so you're like, oh, okay, all right, keep it to myself. I don't want to freak anybody out. So there's this group on Facebook that has nothing to do with spirituality. It's completely a photography group. And somebody said, I think my studio is haunted. Tell me your ghost stories. And everybody just starts chiming in. My friend tags me in this post, and I'm like, oh yeah, I got this and I got this and this and this. And you share like, oh, I don't remember what you said, but you're basically like, if anyone has any questions, you can just feel free to DM me. And I remember specifically
yeah.
messaging you, and it's probably still on Facebook. But it's like, if my grandmother were alive, she would be like my grandmother, if she knew I was reaching out to you, because I came from a Jewish home, and then as in my 20s I went to like Christian church, and so everything that has to do with mm, anything other than their rules is considered evil, the devil,
Hmm.
blah blah blah. Like, but I was
Hmm.
having, so what's crazy is I would have experiences before I went to church as a kid, and even while I was in the church they were still happening. So that's why I knew it wasn't because I was in or out of church. It wasn't because of my faith or belief system or how I labeled it, because I was still having experiences. I did my first automatic
Right.
writing as a Christian girl, praying for my freaking future spouse and like being impatient about things. And I'm just journaling, and I'm literally watching my hand move on its own, and in my head going, these are not my thoughts. I'm watching my hand go, I'm not even thinking. I literally was like, I'm not thinking these things, but I'm watching these sentences come out. And then I read it back to myself and was like, dude, it's third person. It's not even like me. It's like you need to be patient, blah blah blah. And I was like, it's never happened since, but I've always kind of tucked it away, and like, that's that whole labeling
Oh
thing.
my gosh.
So I reach out to you, you provide me with a slew of resources, and then we start practicing.
Hmm.
And that's what happened. We just started practicing. And you let
Well,
me know I
and
wasn't
I
crazy.
Yes, right. And I think like when we first met and I gave you those resources, it was like a full almost 2 years before we actually started talking daily about it.
Yes.
And then like we've pretty much been talking daily for over a year now.
Oh,
And
for
it's
sure.
practicing,
For
like we
sure.
started off practicing. Yeah.
Yeah.
So then tell us too, like, because you're a photographer, that's like one of your things, right? You're a photographer professional, and you've done a number of things, and I are doing a number of things. But like, so how are you actually starting to work with your psychic medium abilities now for the greater good? I guess we should say, like, how are you helping other people with it?
So first I had to embrace that it was not an evil thing, and that it's not the devil, and that it's not all of these things that I was conditioned to believe. And
Mm-hmm.
once I get to that point, I can now explain it to other people who have apprehensions of what it is, because it's just a simple message that comes through. So I just do practice readings on people. I sometimes I get referrals where it's like somebody's really struggling and they're like, hey, can you talk to my friend? So it's gone outside of my immediate circle now, because now it's to the point where I get like, can you talk to so and so? And I had like a small Instagram account and Reddit account set up where I was just doing practice readings on people, and that shit was still like, even as a
Mm-hmm. That's
complete
great.
stranger, it was like, dude, it's still happening. So I know it's not because I know them, because they're complete strangers off the internet. And so I just do these
Which
little
is
readings.
great. That's great validation for you.
Yeah, it's incredibly confidence boosting. So this weekend coming up to, I'm going to do a practice reading for a ladies group in an old brothel that is another photographer studio who's completely supported and embraced my gifts. When I said, dude, I think this is what's going on in my life, and like, don't judge me. And she was like, no, do a reading on me, like, please. Like, and her family came through, like, just da 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 da. And I want to say though, even with practice readings, even if it's not a mediumship, a lot of times what will come through is just intuitive guidance for them anyways. I've been able to pull up like
Mm-hmm.
see people's mental health, see people's occasionally medical. I can see medical things, but I almost see it like the thing that's
Mm-hmm.
wrong with them medically has to do with like a spiritual or inner issue. That part I'm not super duper strong on, but I just try to be there for people. I get a lot of people that call me for advice because I can foresee
Yep.
and I can feel what things feel like and say, okay, if you do this, I feel like these are the possible outcomes. If you do this, this is what it feels like. This feels airy, this feels really heavy, and whatever it is that I see,
Mm-hmm.
and I'll get the visions. And I'm always just like, dude, just take it for a grain of salt. Like, things can change, things are fluid. um so I just, whatever comes my way is, if somebody's, I don't do cold readings though. I won't like pull a stranger out of somewhere and be like, hey, I got a mess,
Right.
your uncle's standing right
Like,
next to you. Like, I'm not, first of all, I think that's, I can't, I'm too afraid of rejection and being wrong.
well,
It's inappropriate, I
and
think.
if somebody doesn't want, we can't assume that somebody wants that kind of
Correct.
information either, right? So like, I never do that either. I will only poke around in someone's energy if they
They
ask
ask.
me to.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, yep. If they need something, or if I need to understand how to protect myself, right? I will
Correct.
definitely do a scan of somebody's energy to make sure that I am okay.
Yeah.
Um, but so can people reach out to you then if you want to do some more readings?
Yeah, I do have an Instagram, so it's at Your Intuitive Friend. You can DM a photo. You can actually just get on the wait list right now, because as we're forming this podcast,
Mm-hmm.
I'm only kind of doing it here and there, just because there's a lot of stuff in the works right now. But wait
Mm-hmm.
wait list or DM. But what's crazy is I will also follow my intuition when I know I need to read somebody right now. So even if I've told people
Mm-hmm.
before, send me your photo and I'll be able to hit this next week probably. And what's happened was Spirit was like, no, now. And I'm like, okay, I know I'm supposed to wait, but this is what I feel. And they're like, oh my God. It's just like, okay, so the timing is never on my own timing. But I think soon I'll probably be able to like dedicate maybe a certain day of the week to doing, because it could all be done by phone. I've done by DM. I could do by message. Um, the energy is
Mhm.
the energy. People will come through and people will still
Yep.
show me stuff in meditation. So yeah, at your intuitive
Yep.
friend.
Spirit doesn't care.
Yep.
That's great.
Yeah.
So the more people I think that understand this is a totally, and that's something I've realized too, and maybe you have as well, that once you actually put yourself out there and you start saying like, this is who I am, this is how life works for me, and people are like,
They're
oh,
like,
that's awesome, right? Or
yeah.
like, oh yeah, me too.
Oh, do me next.
So
Do me
it's
next.
you,
Yeah. I'm like,
yeah,
on the spot.
yep. I think that's what kind of trips us up at times, is we worry about the rejection,
Mhm.
and when we actually step into it and have the courage to do so, we find that there's so many more people who are willing to be open-minded and
Or there's more
embrace
people
that.
like us who are like, oh my God, I didn't realize I was an empath. I didn't realize that I was so sensitive
Right?
to all of
Yeah.
these things. Because that's really
Yep.
what started my journey, was like looking up HSP, highly sensitive people. I was trying to figure out
Mhm.
why my energy was affected around certain people. Like literally, certain people make me want to vomit after being around them, and headaches. Uh, Versus feeling really good around people that I would leave and like, oh my God, I feel so incredibly inspired and so ready to take on the world
Mhm.
after I talk to this person. And then realizing, oh, I do have, sensitivity to lights and sounds. And then as I'm researching all the things about being an empath, is like, all these memories start coming back from when I was a kid of like, oh shit, I forgot about that. And I forgot about that. And
Yes.
that makes sense now. That's what this was. That's the visions I would see of like things that would come true and blips of information. And so it's just been really cool to embrace it. My friends and family, only a select few know that I can do this. There's some people who don't believe me, or they just think it's a crack of bullshit anyways, and so I choose to not tell them, just because it's like you said, it's protection of myself right now. um,
Yep. Mhm.
I know that the readings I've done, the mothers who have lost children, grandparents, siblings, spouses, when I've done readings for them and they talk about the accuracy and the detail that comes out during these readings, like I know from that it's not a bunch of bullshit, and that it's legit and it's for real, and there's something to this ability. And
Oh,
I
yeah.
have to
And
focus on that, to not give a shit what so and so is going to judge me for over here, because it's helping
mhm.
somebody.
Yep.
And you know i I have
Yep.
to do it. If I don't,
Yep.
it's draining in the other way, where you're like, oh God, it's
Yep.
nagging. It's a nagging feeling of like, I know I need to do this. So yeah.
Yep. And yep, absolutely it is draining the other direction. And really like we would realistically have to learn how to navigate naysayers anyway, because there will always be naysayers.
Always.
And really it's about showing you how to step into your power and your authenticity with this kind of work. And you don't just decide like, oh, I'm going to be this and do this. Although all of us do have the ability to be very intuitive. It's about how you engage it and practice with it and trust that it's working.
Mm-hmm.
But like when you step into this work, it's hard at first, because there are a lot of people that will tell you that it's not real. So you do have to focus on the people
And
who say, thank you, you're helping
yeah,
me.
yeah, like I'm sure we can have a whole topic of like spirituality versus religion versus this, and not in a negative way, but comparing the
Hmm.
experiences that we go through and just showing how each culture
Hmm.
labels it, because every culture has
Right.
ghosts, every culture has spirits, every culture has mediumship in some form, tuning in, energy work,
Hmm.
but it's like
Seers.
they
Yep.
they
Hmm.
call it something different, but at the core of what we're all
Hmm.
experiencing, we're fucking souls having a human experience. That's it.
Oh gosh.
Yep.
Well, I look forward to seeing how you expand in this role, because it's been so fun to get to know you through this process of
I
practicing with
know.
you. And you already know what I've said to you about how it's going to expand for you, but it's going to be really fun to watch this unfold for you. And I'm so
Crazy.
honored that I get to walk this path with you.
Dude, it was all divine.
Oh, it was really
So,
great to interview
yes, thank
you.
you so much. And I'm looking forward to our next episode.
Me too. We're going to have so much fun on this podcast. So I hope you all stick around to hear what we have to say.
Please let us know what you think. Leave us your comments, leave a review, all that stuff that we're supposed to say at the end of a podcast. Woof. All right, guys.
That's my dog making her appearance. Bye. Thanks for joining us for another episode of Souls and Stardust. Connect with us on Instagram @GratitudeMaven and @YourIntuitiveFriend. Until next time, stay
magical.